Today I'm going to be breaking down one of the most prolific metal covers I've probably ever made to date. Hopefully. So if you haven't already checked it out, the last metal cover that I did as of the recording of this video is a metal cover of the MrBeast outro song. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I'll put a card up here, a link down in the description, or you can go look for it on my channel. It's a very obvious thumbnail, and go watch that and listen to it. It's very, very short. It's like 2 minutes, if that. But today, I decided to jump into more of the production side of things for you guys to show you the inner workings, kind of the man behind the curtain of the production of that song itself. So we're going to jump into Reaper. I'm going to show you the project. We're going to go over some of the things I did in it to get the sounds and all that fun stuff, and get you out of here. So hopefully that's something you're looking for. If not, just go watch some of my other stuff. I don't know. But if we just jump over here into Reaper, this is pretty much the bulk of the project right here. I've got two versions of it. The first version was kind of just a straight through heavier version of the song itself. There was no adding of parts, there was no solo, there was nothing added to it. And the second version, I decided to change things up a little bit and add some stuff to the actual piece to make it a little more original and a little bit longer. So the first side, like I said, it's just basically the song itself, just metal. This one is a little different with the solo and some other changes. So I'll break down the track setup here, and then we'll kind of go from there. So basically what I've got is I've got my one drum track, which I use the GGD One Kit Wonder metal version. Alright, you guys, so upon editing this, I realized that the method that I used in OBS to capture my screen and everything did not capture the plugins and stuff that I was trying to showcase in here. So I'm going to run down those real quick for you guys so you understand what I'm talking about in this video. So this is the One Kit Wonder metal from GGD. Pause it if you need to at any point. This is the Jin bass. This is also very awesome, as I state in the video. This is the archetype Gojira and everything that I use for my guitars, and then all the vocal stuff is pretty much all down in the buses. So I'll go over the buses for the mixing here. So the bass bus, I'll go over again. I've got Neutron here with some EQ and compression, pretty simple. I've got some more compression on some of the lower palm mutes here. You can follow that if you need to. And then Ozone 9 here for a little bit of limiting. On the guitar bus, I've got Neutron 3 at the beginning with some EQ and some compression, and then some more compression on those palm mutes. And then on the vocal bus, I've got some pretty simple stuff with Neutron 3. Again, as you can see, I love this plugin. Some compression, EQ, and the exciter is turned off because I wanted this to be a more clean vocal song. And that's, for the most of it, pretty much it. Other than the mix bus, or the master bus actually, at the end of everything, or at the top. I've got Neutron 3 again, EQ, a little bit of smiley face EQ, a little bit of exciter going on, and some more compression, and then followed up by Ozone 9 to limit everything to a good luff level for YouTube and streaming and stuff like that. So apologies for that. Hopefully this gives you all the information you need if you want to follow it, and let's get back to the video. For all of the drums on this, it's an awesome sounding drum kit. I love this thing, and even though I don't use it as much as I would like to, it gets the job done. If you've never checked it out, I would definitely recommend it. Going down to the bass, I've got the one MIDI bass line, and that's with Jin Bass by Submission Audio. Again, really good sounding. Really good sounding bass. I would recommend that as well. Moving on to guitars, I pretty much have two rhythm guitar tracks, a left and a right, and those kind of come out to right. And so for those, what I've got going is a instance of Archetype Gojira by Neural DSP, and I've got it on the chunk setting underneath Rich Henshaw from the band Haken. he's got that chunk setting there, and I adjusted it by turning the gain down a little bit, and threw that on both of those tracks. The only other tracks I've got here are some guitar solo tracks. So this really isn't a solo, I should rename it. It's just the clean section at the beginning of the song. Just calling up the kind of melody of the actual chorus for this song to begin with, and then it jumps into everything. The other section I've got is the actual guitar solo section, with a second track for the actual guitar metal solo later on. Throughout the whole entirety of this, with this guitar solo, I've got my guitar just is kind of running in unison with the vocal lines and the vocal melodies for most of the song, just to kind of beef it up and give it more of an anthem kind of feel, because I wanted this to be kind of like a stadium anthem version, because that's how I envisioned the metal version of this being, like this big kind of like anthem. Everybody's cheering, everybody is chanting together, which brings me to the actual vocals for this, which were probably the most intensive part of this whole thing. So as you can see, for the main lines here, for a lot of the vocals for the verses, I've got about 5 vocal tracks going here. 6,000, oh, Mr. B6,000, oh. And then from there's pretty much 3 main running, and then the other 2 are basically calling out specific words to kind of have them stick out a little more. Oh, Mr. B6000, yeah, you know his name. He changed it once or twice, but I think it's here to stay. Just kind of to beef up certain parts of that to make them stick out a little bit. And for those, I'm not doing too much with the vocals. If I go down to my actual vocal bus, because I run all of my vocal tracks down into an actual vocal bus, I've got an instance of Neutron 3 by Isotope, really, really good, with some easy compression, a little bit of EQ. I turned the exciter off because I wanted this to be a little more clean in the vocals and not heavier, so I didn't want that extra like distortion in there. Then the only other thing I've got is a little bit of delay added on here, and it's usually what I like to use for my vocals instead of reverb, because it basically gets the same effect across without getting muddy and really like just to being too much with the way reverb can be sometimes. And that's really about it for the vocals. That's all I've pretty much got, and I'm recording into my SM7B for most of this, and you know, they may not be the greatest vocals in the world because I'm not the greatest vocalist to begin with, but it gets the job done. And then we move into like the actual chorus right here, right? So, with that, again, like I said a little bit ago, I wanted it to be this big kind of audience chant kind of thing. So, what I did with all of the main vocals that I've got running with this, right? Mr. B6000, oh. Singing the main melody and being on key and all that. I added a bunch of these other vocal tracks on there, just one-offs. And as you can see, they kind of have a step here where they increasingly have more voices chanting the chorus and whatnot, just so that each chorus is bigger and bigger and bigger, a little production thing just to give some kind of climax and rise to the song. And as you can see, I've got them labeled here: low opera voice, noise plugged, female, monotone, grit, low, 2 off times. And that just basically tells you what I did for those tracks. Like, see, if I do a low opera voice for this, this is what it sounds like. If I can select the track. Mr. B6000, oh. And it might sound really stupid in context, and it really is on its own, but when you fit it into the grand scheme of the whole mix with everything, it gives that effect you want. You want to do kind of like all kinds of different voices so that me, myself, my own self, can sound like a crowd of people. So I can't just do my own voice over and over and over because it'll just sound like me. I've got to try to sound like other people. So now I've got like nose plugged, real nasally. It's like Squidward basically singing. And I've got a female one that's a little higher. Maybe that's more of like a kid, a monotone one for someone who's like can't be on key. MrBeast 6000. Because not everyone's going to be like a fantastic singer, and the rest kind of goes with it. I got some that are off time so that it's not all completely in sync. I've got a grit one here that adds a little more grit. MrBeast 6000. Basically sounds like a guy who's struggling on the toilet, and all those together add up to a much bigger sound. MrBeast 6000. Oh, MrBeast 6000. Oh. And that basically gets the sound for the chorus. And you get back into the verse here. The verse does the same thing. We got these little vocals here, like this. Some might say they're a ticket to fame. The occasional intro may not make sense, but we all get a laugh at their expense. And then it jumps into everything all over again with an even bigger chorus. And this time I added these extra tracks here. All of these that you see right there, those are all extra tracks. And I basically did some duplicates of like a grit, another high. I did some other opera kind of voices here just to give some more different sounding stuff. Right? Just different sounding people, just so it sounds like a crowd. And we jump over here, we've actually got the solo here that I chopped up into pieces, right? And those simply right there, that little run there at the end is just running in parallel. Running in parallel thirds, pretty much, which usually sounds pretty good for that kind of dueling harmonized guitar thing. And then we kick back into this section here where I cut out all the instruments except for the vocals, right? So after the solo, all so that I can bring it round again back into the chorus for a big epic, ending to this whole thing. And I added a couple more voices onto the end of this one just to make it a little bit bigger yet again, because we're hitting that epic moment. So having all those instruments drop out just to kick right back in. And I had this cool little slide thing here I did with the solo guitar pieces just to transition us back into the whole thing. Right? So it makes it a little more epic, I think, at least. And then we've got this kind of bridge outro section to the song that I kind of did my own thing a little bit with because I couldn't do the vocal runs that the original guy did, but just some of these. That's all 5 voices. And they're all in unison. They're all doing the same thing. And then the only part that I kind of changed and made different was a little bit of the ending, because he had some weird, like, not to the grid kind of things happening with it. And I wanted to end it a little bit differently. I wanted to keep that motion going through the end, to the end of the song. And so with this, right, I just ended it. I'll mute the vocals first and just. just like that. And so I added these vocals here that are not the greatest sounding again, and that wasn't the goal. It's supposed to be kind of a crowd sounding thing again, just to end it out. So I added my own little thing here at the end saying, I think he ends with MrBeast 6000, and that's it. I just added our god of YouTube on there just because it seemed to kind of fit with how I was ending it. I needed some extra vocal line there just so it wasn't just abruptly ending, the vocals just stopping and the music going. I think it works. But as you can hear in there, there's a little bit of different voices from what I had before, just to, again, change it up. And I didn't want to have to go through and do all these vocal lines like I did before all over again. So I did some stuff a little bit differently. Like I got some little growls going on here, actually. Just some real like kind of stuff, just to give a different texture, you know what I mean? Just to give it something different. You can hear them in there. And I had to add those in there because I've grown on the growling vocals quite a lot in my own development and being able to somewhat do some. I like to add them in there when I can. They're not always at the forefront as the main thing, but they do work nicely behind cleans. And I usually do that with a lot of my main vocal lines, like in verses and stuff. I'll have a rougher, it may not always be like growly like this, but it'll be like, instead of just a normal clean sounding, it'll be like something grittier just to give more texture. It fluffs the stuff up. I don't know how to explain it very well. It just, I seen Leo Miraculously, or however you pronounce his last name, from Frog Leap Studios, that in a very old video that he does that kind of thing, and I've always latched onto it and used it in most of my stuff. So if you listen to any of my covers or anything I'm singing in, you'll notice there's usually some darker, if they're not already at the forefront, harsher vocals at the sides, just kind of beefing things up and making them sound a little heavier. And that's, I mean, that's pretty much it. And the only other thing musically I'll note is this last little bit that I added, this little clean section here at the very end. You know, it was ending on this like major chord, so I had to throw in this little Lydian lick. Just because I love Lydian so much, I just had to throw it in there, and it's very faint. You know. I think it's fitting, and I like throwing fun little stuff like that at it. And like I said, I just love Lydian. But that's pretty much the gist of all the actual recorded tracks. Now, just to give a quick rundown without going into crazy detail for you that may be interested in this, if you're looking at the bus for the bass guitar, I've got an instance of Neutron here with a compressor. If you need to pause and see what I've got here, you can check that. EQ going on here. I've got an instance of Rex comp, right? It's a dynamic. It helps with the palm mutes, right? It works really well with palm mutes, like a dynamic compressor with certain frequencies being pressed on more than others, which really helps with like palm mutes. And then an instance of Ozone 9 for a little bit of maximizing. Guitar bus, I don't have a whole lot going on. Neutron, I've got an EQ here to cut out a lot of the lows. Some of the whistly sounds, they're very high stuff you don't want to hear. A little bit of compression after that. And then that dynamic compression, right, It's just kind of in the lower range to help with those palm mutes yet again. You already saw the vocal bus, and then the rest is like parallel compression, drum reverb, all this stuff for like the drums and stuff, which is a whole other thing to get into. It's a very lengthy process with these kinds of drums, but that's the gist of it. If we go over to my actual master bus, I'll show you that real quick. And ending off with an instance of neutron again. You got a little bit of EQ going on, a little bit of an exciter going on, some more compression. Then we've got ozone 9 for the maximizer, just to limit everything where we want it. And this is usually where I set things for the most part. And this is really useful to go to mono, to hear your mix in mono or stereo when you're mixing. If your DAW doesn't already have a button for that, and Reaper does down here in the corner, underneath the FX button for your master chain. So you can switch between mono and stereo and hear your mix if it sounds good at mono. Because if it does, it usually sounds good in stereo. And that is pretty much all there is to it. I mean, it's a fairly simple mix. I didn't do a whole lot of crazy stuff to it. And yeah, I mean, if you got more questions about stuff, I'd be happy to answer it. Most of the setup for this is my template, actually, for most of what I do. I just open this up, and it's got all of the top-down mixing stuff already in there, because I watched a masterclass from Adam Nolly a couple years ago, and I set up this template, and it's a good starting point, and then I will adjust things per project. But it's been really useful in getting some good mixes and stuff, at least in my opinion. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So if you've got any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you haven't watched the actual cover yet, go do that, please. Thank you. I've been really pushing to get it out there for people to see. You're going to see me promoting the hell out of it, because I feel like if this gets in front of the right people, this can be a really big thing. So there's that. And if this is a video you're watching and this is 5 years old at this point, whatever, still go watch it if it's still around. And that's it for me. Otherwise, subscribe. Yeah.